Discomfort is the drug you didn't know you were addicted to. It whispers lies while it rots your spine. It tells you you're doing fine while your potential suffocates. Every soft chair, every skipped hardship, every excuse you protect is another vote for weakness. Men don't fall because life is hard. They fall because life gets comfortable, and comfort turns predators into pets. Here's the part you don't want to hear. Your mind was never built to feel good. It was built to command, adapt, and dominate chaos. Comfort shuts that system down. It dulls urgency. It kills hunger. It makes you negotiate with yourself instead of issuing orders. And once a man starts negotiating with his own weakness, he's already lost authority over his life. You've been taught that mental strength comes from understanding, from talking, from thinking your way out. Wrong. Mental strength is forged when the body obeys without discussion, when action moves faster than emotion. Comfort keeps you trapped in endless internal chatter, explanations, excuses. Power begins when you move beyond that noise. This is where most people misunderstand what I call speaking in tongues. It's not religion, it's not mysticism. It's the moment you stop speaking the weak language of comfort and start operating in a higher code action without translation. When discipline replaces discussion, when your behavior speaks louder than your thoughts. That's a different tongue. Most men never learn it because it requires silence, pressure, and repetition under stress. Speaking in tongues is when your identity shifts from thinker to executor, from consumer to controller, from man who feels to man who decides. You stop explaining yourself. You stop needing permission. Your routines become ruthless. Your standards become non-negotiable. You don't motivate yourself. You move. That's dominance. That's control. Comfort hates this language because comfort can't survive it. Comfort needs delay. It needs softness. It needs you confused and emotional. Discipline, on the other hand, is a foreign language to weak men. It's spoken to early mornings, lonely wins, and consistency when no one's watching. That language rewires your identity. You don't try to be strong. You operate as strengths. High-status men are not comfortable men. They're control men. Their lives look simple because their standards are brutal. They train when they don't feel like it. They work when it's boring. They stay sharp while others seek relief. Comfort asks, "How do I feel?" Power asks, "What must be done?" Only one of those questions builds authority. Comfort is not rest. It is decay, and most men don't realize they're rotting because the process feels pleasant. Decay doesn't announce itself with pain. It arrives quietly, wrapped in convenience, routine, and justification. You tell yourself you've earned ease, that life is finally under control, that struggle is behind you. That lie is lethal. The moment you stop placing deliberate pressure on yourself, your standards begin to drop without your permission. You wake up a little slower. You tolerate things you would have rejected before. You start accepting good enough. That's not peace. That's erosion. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. The human mind does not stay sharp in comfort. It dulls. It adapts downward. When there is no demand, no resistance, no urgency, the mind doesn't preserve strength out of gratitude. It abandons it out of efficiency. Why stay alert when nothing is required? Why stay disciplined when survival feels guaranteed? Comfort trains your nervous system to relax, and relaxation over time becomes weakness. Not dramatic weakness, subtle weakness. The dangerous kind you don't notice until pressure returns and you realize you can't handle it anymore. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you reinforce a pattern. Patterns don't care about your intentions. They become automatic. Skip the hard thing once, and your brain records it as an option. Skip it twice, and it becomes a preference. Skip it long enough, and it becomes your identity. This is how strong men quietly become fragile without a single catastrophic failure. There's no collapse, no rock bottom, no wake-up moment, just slow loss of edge. And once your edge is gone, life doesn't get kinder, it gets more humiliating. Comfort also destroys your relationship with discomfort, and that's where the real damage happens. A man who avoids discomfort loses the ability to respond under pressure. He hesitates. He overthinks. He searches for relief instead of solutions. When stress appears, he panics internally because his system is no longer trained to stay calm inside difficulty. That's why comfortable men fold when chaos enters the room. They aren't weak by nature, they're untrained by choice. What makes comfort especially dangerous is how convincing it sounds. It disguises itself as self-care, balance, and being smart. It tells you to slow down, to not push too hard, to avoid unnecessary struggle. But strength was never built by avoiding strain. Every meaningful adaptation in the human body and mind comes from resistance. Muscles grow under load. Confidence grows under responsibility. Mental toughness grows under repeated exposure to pressure without escape. Remove the pressure, and the system shrinks. Look closely at men who crumble under stress. They don't lack intelligence. They lack tolerance. They haven't practiced staying sharp while uncomfortable. They haven't trained themselves to operate when things feel heavy, boring, or unfair. Comfort stole that capacity from them slowly, patiently, without drama. And by the time they notice, rebuilding it feels overwhelming, which pushes them deeper into avoidance. The harsh reality is this: the world does not reward comfort. It punishes it. Markets don't care about your feelings. Competition doesn't slow down because you're tired. Life doesn't pause because you chose ease yesterday. The pressure will come whether you invite it or not. The only choice you have is whether you meet it trained or exposed. Comfort prepares you for nothing. Discomfort prepares you for everything. Men who stay dangerous to the world understand this at a deep level. They don't chase suffering for attention, but they never allow comfort to become their default state. They introduce voluntary hardship on purpose. They do hard things when they don't need to, so when they must, they're already in control. That's the difference between decay and dominance. One happens automatically. The other requires intention every single day. Mental strength is not built by emotion, and believing otherwise is one of the most expensive lies men carry. Emotion feels powerful in the moment, but it is unstable, inconsistent, and easily manipulated. One day you feel motivated, focused, unstoppable. The next day that same energy is gone, replaced by doubt, irritation, or fatigue. If your ability to act depends on how you feel, then you are not in control. You are reacting, and a man who reacts does not lead his life, he is dragged through it. Obedience is the foundation most people misunderstand. Not obedience to others, but obedience to structure, to standards, to decisions made in advance. Strong men do not ask themselves how they feel before acting. That question already gives emotion authority it doesn't deserve. They move because movement is required, because the order was already issued. This is how power is created internally. The mind learns that resistance is irrelevant and that action is inevitable. Over time, hesitation disappears because it is no longer useful. Emotion promises comfort. Discipline delivers results. Emotion wants validation, reassurance, and perfect conditions. Discipline doesn't negotiate. It executes under imperfect circumstances without complaint. This is why relying on emotion keeps men inconsistent. You work hard when you feel inspired, then disappear when the feeling fades. That pattern teaches your mind that quitting is acceptable. Obedience teaches the opposite. It teaches that action is not optional. Once that lesson is installed, mental strength begins to compound. Most men collapse under pressure not because the task is too hard, but because they are not used to acting while uncomfortable. They wait for clarity, confidence, or motivation to arrive before they move. That delay weakens them. Every pause strengthens doubt. Obedience cuts through that loop. You act first, and clarity follows. Confidence is not the cause of action. It is the byproduct of repeated execution. There is a moment, early in discipline, where everything inside you resists. The body is tired. The mind argues. Emotion offers excuses that sound reasonable and intelligent. This is the critical point where mental strength is either built or destroyed. If you obey the feeling, you train weakness. If you obey the standard, you train authority. That moment, repeated daily, rewires how you operate under stress. Over time, the internal noise gets quieter, not because you defeated it emotionally, but because you stopped listening. High-level operators understand this instinctively. They remove emotion from decision-making wherever possible. They rely on systems, routines, and non-negotiables. This is not coldness. It is efficiency. Emotion is expensive. It consumes energy and attention. Obedience simplifies life. Fewer decisions, fewer debates, more output. When action becomes automatic, mental bandwidth is freed for strategy instead of self-talk. The uncomfortable truth is that emotion makes men predictable and therefore controllable. If someone can influence how you feel, they can influence what you do. Comfort, praise, fear, and distraction all work on emotional men. Obedient men are harder to move off course because their actions are not tied to mood. They operate from commitment, not impulse. That is real independence. Over time, obedience reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You see yourself as someone who does what is required, regardless of internal weather. That shift is powerful. It builds trust with yourself, and self-trust is the core of mental strength. You no longer wonder if you'll show up. You already know the answer. This is why emotion cannot be the engine of strength. Engines need consistency. Obedience provides it. Feelings come and go. Standards stay. When you live this way long enough, action becomes your default state. Not because it feels good, but because it feels normal. And once discipline becomes normal, mental strength stops being something you chase and becomes something you carry. Pressure is not an enemy, it is a filter. It reveals what you are built on and what you have been pretending to be. When pressure enters a man's life, the mask comes off instantly. There is no time to perform, explain, or posture. What remains is your conditioning. This is why pressure terrifies weak men. It exposes the gap between who they claim to be and what they can actually execute. When stakes are real, most men try to escape pressure by talking. They explain their intentions, their plans, their potential. They flood the world with words because words are safe. Words cost nothing. Action under pressure costs everything. Pressure silences language because it demands response, not discussion. In that environment, only results speak. Excuses evaporate. Theory collapses. What you can do right now becomes the only currency that matters. This is where power is forged. Not in comfort, not in planning, but in repeated exposure to situations where failure is possible and delay is punished. Pressure compresses time and strips away unnecessary behavior. It forces efficiency. Under pressure, you learn quickly what matters and what doesn't. You stop wasting energy on emotion, validation, and fantasy. You begin operating with precision because sloppiness is punished immediately. Men who live without pressure become loud and fragile. They rely on explanation to protect their ego. Men who live under pressure become quiet and dangerous. They don't need to announce themselves because their actions are already doing the talking. Pressure teaches a different language, one spoken through timing, posture, restraint, and decisive movement. You don't learn it by thinking. You learn it by being tested. When pressure becomes familiar, something important changes internally. The nervous system stops panicking. The mind stops racing. Instead of chaos, there is focus. This is not talent. It is adaptation. The body and mind adjust to what they experience repeatedly. If your life is soft, you become soft. If your life is demanding, you become capable. Pressure, applied consistently, trains you to stay calm where others collapse. This is why men who avoid pressure are easy to dominate. They hesitate. They overreact. They look for escape routes instead of opportunities. Pressure-trained men move differently. They conserve energy. They choose their moments. They act without urgency because urgency is for the unprepared. Real power looks slow on the outside because it is controlled on the inside. Pressure also kills fantasy. It doesn't care who you think you are. It only responds to what you can execute. This is brutal, but it is honest. Many men are in love with a version of themselves that has never been tested. Pressure ends that delusion. It forces alignment between identity and ability. That alignment is where real confidence comes from, not from affirmation, but from evidence. Living under pressure rewires how you see difficulty. Challenges stop feeling personal. They become operational. Problems are no longer threats to your self-image. They are tasks to be handled. This shift alone separates leaders from followers. Followers react emotionally to pressure. Leaders absorb it and use it to sharpen their decision-making. There is a reason high-level environments feel intense. They are designed to filter out weakness quickly. Pressure accelerates growth or collapse. There is no middle ground. Men who choose pressure voluntarily gain control over their development. Men who avoid it are eventually crushed by it when it arrives uninvited. The language of power is not spoken through confidence or charisma. It is spoken through composure under fire, through consistency, when conditions are hostile, through results delivered without explanation. Pressure teaches that language better than any mentor ever could, and once you are fluent in it, you no longer need to convince anyone of your strength. The environment does it for you. Comfort keeps men trapped in their own heads, and most don't realize the prison is self-built. The moment life becomes easy, thinking replaces doing. You start rehearsing conversations that never happen, planning futures you never execute, and analyzing problems you could solve immediately if you moved. The mind loves this state because it feels productive without requiring risk. But this mental activity is not power. It's avoidance disguised as intelligence. Overthinking thrives where there is no urgency. When nothing forces action, the mind fills the space with noise. Doubt multiplies. Options expand. Fear hides behind logic. You tell yourself you're being careful, strategic, thoughtful. In reality, you're stalling. Comfort gives your mind permission to wander, and a wandering mind becomes a weak one. It loses its ability to focus, decide, and commit. Decision-making turns into an endless loop instead of a straight line. Action destroys this cycle instantly. The moment you move, thinking collapses into clarity. Reality replaces speculation. Feedback replaces fantasy. Comfort keeps you rehearsing life instead of living it. Power pulls you into direct contact with consequences. That contact sharpens you. It forces adaptation. You don't need confidence when you're acting. Confidence is something the mind invents to feel safe. Action doesn't wait for safety. Men stuck in their heads are easy to spot. They speak in possibilities, intentions, and theories. They are oppressive in conversation and invisible in results. Comfort has taught them that feeling smart is enough. It isn't. The world doesn't reward insight without execution. It rewards outcomes. And outcomes only come from movement, friction, and exposure to failure. When you live in comfort, the mind becomes the dominant authority. Every decision passes through emotion, memory, and imagined consequences. This slows you down. You begin negotiating with yourself over trivial tasks. Should I do it now or later? Is this the right time? What if it doesn't work? These questions feel responsible, but they are symptoms of weakened control. Strong men don't eliminate doubt by answering it. They eliminate it by acting despite it. Power simplifies life by removing unnecessary internal dialogue. When action is your default response, the mind learns to follow instead of lead. This doesn't make you reckless, it makes you decisive. You stop wasting energy arguing internally and start allocating energy externally. The shift is immediate and noticeable. Your posture changes, your speech shortens, your presence sharpens. Comfort also inflates fear because fear feeds on imagination. When you're inactive, your mind has unlimited time to exaggerate consequences. Risks feel larger than they are. Failure feels permanent instead of instructional. Action exposes fear for what it is, a poor predictor of reality. Most feared outcomes dissolve once you move, but you never learn that lesson if you stay in your head. Men who operate from action develop a different relationship with uncertainty. They don't need full clarity to move forward. They create clarity through motion. Each step provides information. Each mistake provides direction. This creates momentum, and momentum quiets the mind more effectively than any mental technique ever could. Comfort keeps you thinking because thinking feels safe. Action feels dangerous until it becomes familiar. Once it does, the hierarchy flips. Inaction starts to feel wrong. Overthinking becomes uncomfortable. Movement becomes normal. This is where power lives. Not in confidence, not in knowledge, but in the ability to act without internal permission. The most controlled men are not the ones with the best ideas. They are the ones who trust action more than thought. They understand that the mind is a tool, not a commander. Comfort reverses that relationship and lets the tool take over. Power restores order. Action leads. The mind follows. And once that order is established, hesitation disappears. Not because fear is gone, but because it no longer gets a vote. High-status men are not defined by luxury, freedom, or how relaxed their lives look from the outside. That's the fantasy weak men cling to. In reality, high-status men live under standards so strict that most people would feel suffocated by them. Their power comes from control, not comfort. They don't wake up asking what they want to do. They wake up knowing what must be done, and that certainty removes chaos from their lives. Most men chase balance because they are overwhelmed. They want softness to compensate for lack of structure. High-status men don't need balance because their internal order is already established. They don't swing between extremes of motivation and burnout. Their days are predictable, disciplined, and deliberately narrow. Fewer choices, fewer distractions, fewer emotional negotiations. This is why their lives appear simple. Simplicity is not accidental. It is enforced. Brutal standards eliminate indecision. When your rules are clear, life becomes quieter. There is no debate about whether you train, work, or handle responsibility. The decision was made long ago. This removes mental friction that drains weaker men. Most exhaustion is not physical. It is psychological, caused by constantly choosing, doubting, and justifying. High-status men cut that noise out early. Their energy is preserved because it is not wasted on internal arguments. Control also means emotional restraint. Not suppression, but regulation. High-status men do not let moods dictate behavior. They understand that emotions are temporary signals, not commands. Anger doesn't make decisions. Laziness doesn't set schedules. Fear doesn't determine direction. This emotional discipline makes them appear calm under pressure, which others misinterpret as confidence. It's not confidence. It's training. Their standards extend into how they tolerate people, environments, and habits. They don't allow disorder to linger. Messy routines, unreliable relationships, inconsistent effort, these things are removed quickly. Not out of cruelty, but out of respect for their own time and focus. Weak men keep chaos around them and wonder why they feel drained. Strong men eliminate chaos and wonder why others struggle so much. High-status men also understand that comfort is earned in moments, not lived in permanently. They may enjoy luxury, rest, or pleasure, but it never becomes their baseline. The baseline is discipline. Comfort is a reward, not a lifestyle. The moment comfort becomes normal, standards slip. They know this and guard against it aggressively. There is also a ruthless honesty in how they measure themselves. No self-praise, no false reassurance. Results are the only scoreboard. If performance drops, they adjust without emotional drama. This keeps their identity tied to behavior, not self-image. Weak men protect how they feel about themselves. Strong men protect their standards. What intimidates others most is not their intensity, but their consistency. Anyone can be extreme for a short time. Very few can be controlled forever. High-status men do not need bursts of motivation because their system carries them forward. They don't rise and fall. They advance steadily, quietly, relentlessly. This level of control creates authority without effort. People sense it immediately, not because of volume, arrogance, or display, but because of stability. A man who controls himself is difficult to manipulate. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't overreact. He doesn't explain himself excessively. That restraint signals power more loudly than aggression ever could. The harsh truth is this: most men would rather feel free than be effective. High-status men choose effectiveness first, knowing freedom follows. Their lives are not easy. They are ordered. And order, enforced long enough, becomes dominance. You either choose discomfort or you choose irrelevance. And pretending there's a third option is how most men waste their lives. There is no neutral ground where you stay safe, comfortable, and respected at the same time. The world doesn't work like that. It never has. Status, power, and self-respect are always purchased with discomfort paid in advance. If you're not paying that price voluntarily, you're quietly accepting a future where you don't matter. Discomfort is the signal that you are still alive in the arena. It means you are stretching beyond what is familiar, beyond what is safe, beyond what your weaker instincts prefer. Irrelevance, on the other hand, feels calm. It feels quiet. It feels harmless. That's why it's so seductive. Nothing challenges you. Nothing demands growth. Nothing exposes your limits. But nothing sharpens you either. Slowly, without drama, you fade into the background of your own life. Men don't become irrelevant overnight. They become irrelevant by postponing discomfort again and again. They delay the hard conversation. They skip the difficult task. They choose ease today with the promise of effort tomorrow. A tomorrow rarely comes. What does come is a subtle loss of urgency. Days blur together, standards soften, ambition turns into nostalgia, and one day they realize they are watching others live the life they once imagined for themselves. Discomfort is not about suffering for attention. It's about maintaining your edge. It's about staying capable in a world that rewards competence and punishes hesitation. Every time you lean into something difficult, you reinforce a powerful internal message: I can be trusted under pressure. That trust compounds. It becomes competence that doesn't depend on praise or outcomes. Irrelevance sends the opposite message. It tells your mind that avoidance is acceptable. Once that belief settles in, regaining momentum feels heavy and unnatural. The uncomfortable truth is that the world sorts men continuously. Not by words, not by intentions, but by behavior over time. Men who choose discomfort rise quietly. Men who choose comfort disappear quietly. There is no applause for either path. That's what makes the choice so revealing. You are defined by what you do when no one is watching and nothing is forcing you. Discomfort sharpens perception. It forces focus. It compresses time. When something is hard, you are present. When everything is easy, your mind drifts. Presence is power. Drifting leads to mediocrity. Men who avoid discomfort lose their ability to stay engaged. They become distracted, passive, and reactive. Opportunities pass them by because they are mentally elsewhere, numbed by convenience. Irrelevance is not just external, it's internal. It's the quiet knowledge that you are not using your capacity. That awareness eats at men more than failure ever could. Failure hurts, but it teaches. Irrelevance feels empty. You can't point to a clear mistake. There's nothing dramatic to fix. Just a slow realization that you're no longer dangerous, no longer necessary, no longer respected, even by yourself. Choosing discomfort daily keeps that from happening. It doesn't require heroic effort. It requires consistency, small acts of resistance, doing what is required when it would be easier not to. That pattern keeps your nervous system sharp and your identity intact. You remain someone who responds, not someone who avoids. The world doesn't need explanations. It needs capable men, men who can endure pressure without collapsing, men who move toward difficulty instead of away from it, men who are still relevant because they made themselves useful, reliable, and resilient. This choice never disappears. It presents itself every day in quiet moments. Train or rest, speak or stay silent, act or delay. Those decisions accumulate. Discomfort builds strength. Irrelevance builds regret. One path makes you harder, sharper, and respected. The other makes you invisible long before anyone says it out loud. If this makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the last signal your mind can still be saved. Because the moment you choose comfort over pressure, you don't just weaken, you surrender. And surrendered men don't lead, don't win, and don't matter. So understand this clearly. Comfort is the enemy of mental strength. Kill it, or it will kill the man you could have been. There is no balance. There is no soft path to power. Step into pressure, speak the language of action, and take control or stay comfortable and stay irrelevant.